Greetings, dear viewers, and welcome back to ALLATRA TV Middle East. Today we have another amazing conversation on the topic Creative Society, and we have a very special guest with us today. But before we start, I would like to greet my co-host today, Tahira from Singapore. Hi, Tahira, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me and introducing me to Creative Society. And here we have, I brought a guest also, Kirpal. And
Thank you.
yes, so I had a wonderful interview the last time with you, and we talked about Creative
Absolutely.
Society. We talked about truth will set us free. Okay. And it was a wonderful discussion. And this time as founder of Golden Door, Truth and Integrity of the Written Word, my associate, Dr. Kirpal Singh, is the chief judge and also has been a great supporter. And his experience in the literary field in, how many years now? 30 years, 40 years, more than that.
40 years, yeah.
40 years. And first Asian director of the Commonwealth Essays, isn't it? And
Yes.
yes, director of he was a director of the university, SMU University, and yes, and multiple books he's got, and he's always been judge of multiple, really outstanding awards in Singapore, and he's a well-known, renowned literist and culturalist. So if you ask anyone about history, about a society, social issues, Kirpal has the depth of the knowledge.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Welcome.
Tahira.
He's the opposite of me. I am more of a scientist. We've come together, but when he shares, it will definitely take you back in time, and also it's good because then you can start looking at some of the knowledge, the ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom that we have forgotten. Am I putting you in a hot seat, Kirpal?
No, not quite, not quite. I enjoyed this. Yeah, hot seats are good for driving.
And also that he's got such a vast knowledge of the books, because he's probably read thousands. Just kidding.
Yep, I'm an old man.
Very deep knowledge about books. Okay, he's a library on its own, and absolutely the perfect person to talk about Creative Society, right?
Amazing.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
at least from from our small part of the world, in addition to Tahira, who represents us very well and very beautifully,
Oh, thank you.
I can say that for most Asian societies, the of being creative is quite often seen with a lot of suspicion. But we are not unique in this. We are not the only ones. Even Western societies, from times of ancient Greece and Rome, continuing till today, everywhere, whether it's Greece today or Italy today or UK, look at what's happening to EU. Anybody who has got radical ideas, and if you're really creative, then the ideas are usually quite radical because you're aiming for a different kind of a world. And because we are envisioning a very different world, the substructures of that new world are also going to be different. Human nature is very habit-based and habit-forming. And once we become creatures of habit, it becomes difficult to be creative, because to be habituated is almost contrary to being creative. And this is why someone like myself, my bosses at the university used to tell me, the problem with you is we do not know what you're going to say next. In other words, creative people are unpredictable quite often. And the non-predictable element of a creative person makes people afraid, because they want to know what you're going to do. They want to know what you're going to be like. They're going to know which side you're on, They want political affiliation. They want loyalty, commitment, and all of this. And these are easy, simple answers. But creative people normally tend to be quite complex, I think. And because we value complexity, and that's the only way to go forward, to realize that each person is complex, and out of that very complex makeup of this unique human personality may emerge some beautiful ideas. And this is why we need a creative society to give such individuals good platforms, like you're very gratefully giving to me now. And I'm very thankful and very obliged to both of you and to everybody else responsible for this, because it allows me to say some things that in an ordinary day, even in an ordinary decade, may not be so easy with someone like myself coming from Singapore, simply because most Singaporeans like things the way they are. Creative people sometimes, we'll have to say we also like the way things are, but you know what? We also like things to be a little bit better. And as a creative person, I feel I want to contribute to making this little society just a little bit better. And this is where people sit up and they say, oh, what's he going to do next? Or what is he going to say next? And I think this is why, for the last 40 years, whenever I've been trying to implement something creative, I have always made the people around me, especially the people who I need to be on my side in terms of voting, in terms of pushing my agenda, I need to make them feel very comfortable. And this in itself is quite a big exercise, by the way, to make people feel comfortable about things that are new. Even a new dress. I mean, this is why fashion makers, these fashion designers and all that, they have a very, very hard time, because people are so used to wearing blouses. And if you told someone to wear shorts as a blouse, they will say, what, you crazy? But if you were really creative, you'll find a nice creative way of doing it. One very good creative way we found to make our funny ideas become more public is to use celebrities, right? You use a Hollywood celebrity or a prime minister of some nation who is willing to go along with you and dress in a funny animal kind of disguise or, dress. And then people say, wow, wasn't that nice? I mean, like, I think Mr. Macron and people like that, they're quite creative. Even Angela Merkel, in her own way, has been quite creative. And because she's come up saying things that most people would expect not the German chancellor sort of to say, but maybe somebody else. And so creative people are always preempting. I think that's one word to use, because we're breaking new ground. And I've been very blessed because quite early in life, my creative works were accepted by the United Kingdom, by USA, Canada, and all these countries. And so it became good. And I was the first sort of non-American to be elected to the American Creativity Association, which is quite powerful, the ACA. And I became the first international sort of deputy president. I was the Asian president of the American Creativity Society, but I was also the international senior vice president. And I served in that capacity for many, many years. And that meant that I flew here and there, met wonderfully creative people, whether, these were the Edward de Bonos, or whether they're the Tony Buzans, or whether they're the, nuclear scientists, or whether they were writers from around the world. That was a great privilege to belong to this group of individuals whose main job was to come up with ideas just to make humanity better. But of course, the challenge is that creative people would say, well, my idea of making humanity is better is a little bit better than your idea of making humanity better. So it's good. It's good to have this very, very virulent kind of discussions about what does it mean to make society better. Does it mean better houses? Does it mean better cars? Does it mean better living? Does it mean better salaries? Does it mean better human relationships? Which we often forget, by the way. People very often forget about human relationships. They want a bigger house, they want more money every month, and they want this privilege and that privilege, but they very rarely talk about getting better human relations going, because that takes time. That takes courage. And that takes a lot of convincing other people that beneath that very ugly human being that you think is ugly resides a very beautiful human spirit.
Important.
And in my own experience, I can tell you that a lot of the so-called ugly human beings of the world have got beautiful creative ideas. It's just that most of us are brought up some kind of indoctrination that these people are a bit crazy, you should leave them alone. Because if you start talking with them, in half an hour, you're going to hear so many crazy ideas, you're going to go crazy yourself. And because society doesn't handle creativity very well, it doesn't know what to do with crazy people. And so crazy people are usually put in mental asylums. Very interesting, Tahira, you know this, right? In Singapore's mental hospital, which I visit every now and then, you find people coming and saying, I am Einstein, Albert Einstein, I invented this and that, I was with the great Rutherford and all these people. They were my companions. Now, I mean, this person, and this is a real life example, obviously is living in a different reality. But in that reality, he's very authentic.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
in our reality, we can't seem to connect with that authenticity because we always think that you must be joking. I mean, you're not Albert Einstein. We know Albert Einstein. We know he was like this. This is the way he looked. You're very different. You wear a turban, that kind of a thing. So because of these very set assumptions and presumptions about the other, remember that in cultural discourse, there has been a lot of work now done in the very notion of the other, right? The other. How is the other to be looked at? Whether the idea is the gender, the way men look at women, the way women look at men. It's interesting that women have been writing a lot about the male gaze at the female body. They call it the gaze, right? The way men look at women, very different from the way women look at men. There's a whole psychology behind it. So I think a creative society should be open, should be courageous, and should never be afraid of the truth. And I was telling Tahira, I was teasing her and saying that the next volumes, should be concentrated on golden truths through the window, because sometimes through the door, Tahira, a bit difficult because the door is very big, very difficult to, for one person to come in. So a lot of the time, truth creeps in through little windows, little nooks and corners around the place. And then you suddenly say, wow, I didn't realize. But my God, I just discovered a new truth. So I think that's enlightenment in its own way as well. And because creativity at the end of the day, I think is in some part quite spiritual. I think people who are creative tend to be a little bit more than just human. I think they've got this added dimension. And that dimension involves a lot of compassion, for example, a lot of kindness, a lot of patience. Because some people, they need to talk for 8 hours before they really come up with what they really want to say to you. Because they are using this time to see whether they can really trust you, whether they really can be comfortable with you, and also whether you are comfortable with them. Because creative people know that if the people who are listening are not comfortable, then forget it. They're never going to be listening the way you want them to listen. So it's preparing the ground and everything. Very interesting. I mean, like if you look at the great human being called Jesus, I mean, what did Jesus do? He usually made sure that everybody had a bit of food and everything, right? Before he gave the sermon, right? So many of us, when we hold creative functions, we like to feed people, It's from the old parables, eat, everybody is happy, and then we talk serious business. But very often people talk business first and then they adjourn for lunch, yeah? Maybe if they do it the other way around, things might be better. Who knows?
Yeah, basic needs,
Right.
of course. And Dr. Kirpal, thank you very much. It's a great honor to have you. Yes, it's a great honor to have you with us today.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
as you mentioned, yes, it's important understanding about in which conditions we can be creative, because every human being is creative. And creative society is a format of the society which is based on one main value. It's human life.
Right.
And many people ask us about what is it so special about, why creative society is so special. Didn't we have it before? Why it's not socialism, it's not communism, it's not democracy, monarchy. And we always say, no, this is the format of the society, their human life is the most valuable. But as you mentioned, you studied a lot of ancient civilizations and ancient knowledge. Do you have examples of such a society in the history of our civilization, where people lived as one big family with high spiritual values, their human life was the most important, and every human was equal?
I think in most of our um, sort of civilized societies, whether it's from the west or the east or the north or the south, there always have been communities that have relished and celebrated people who they would call creative in their company. However, because, as I said earlier, creative people tend to have alternative ways of looking at reality, very often the creative people were protected by the other members of the community because the power that controlled that society was not comfortable with alternative views. So one thing that we need to do is to make sure that, this indoctrination begins from kindergarten, right? Probably from the cradle, even not at the kindergarten. By the time they reach the kindergarten, they're already quite conditioned in a certain way of life, in a certain way of dressing, in a certain way of addressing, talking to people, and all of that. But I believe that a radical transformation in our education, the way we bring up our young, beautiful boys and girls, that needs global attention very urgently. And that young girl, Greta, whatever her name is, talking about climate change and all of that, they do that every now and then. There was that Pakistani girl who was, what's her name? They went to the UK. So, yeah. So we've got these individual examples, but they are somehow made celebrities by the media for other reasons, not because the media genuinely believes in everything they say, but it gets them more media attention, right? More people turn on and listen to them and all of that. But the ideas are not really taken hold of and implemented. We hear them, but what do we do after we have heard them? Well, maybe we'll say, well, did you hear this young Greta woman talking? And people say, yeah, somebody must have told her what to say. You see, cynicism. We always believe that somebody must be behind these young people. We still cannot believe that there are young people who know how to think for themselves. Because our whole idea is to make our young people think like us. Then we feel, wow, I'm successful as a daddy. I've got 3 beautiful daughters, by the way, and they're all individual. I mean, if I were to put them in the same room, people will find it very hard to believe. 1, that they're actually sisters, and 2, that they're all my daughters. Because their ideas are very different. They fight with each other over ideas and all of that. And they live very exciting lives. And I think this is what is missing in our society. We somehow are petrified. We are afraid of people who have got very real, workable, different ideas from us. We are afraid of those we know can work. Those that are totally unworkable, we welcome them. So after that, we say, the guy crazy, But the workable ones, are we saying, that one, we better be very careful. If I were you, I wouldn't spend too much time with him. He's radical. We turn the creative to radical. And by using that word, and this is why I've spent my life just specializing in language, and this is the English language. Every word has a nuance that goes way beyond everything else. And I tell my students, it's very easy to use words a little bit differently. So I used to tell them, no point just telling your girlfriend or boyfriend, darling, I love you. Darling, I love you. You can change it and say, wow, my darling, you are so exquisitely adorable that I don't think I can ever stop admiring you. Now, when you say that, most women, their hearts will melt, say this thing. And some of them will go back and say, why can't you be like so-and-so? He's so good with this. flattery. Then they dismiss it as flattery. But I think language plays a very major role in creativity.
Yeah, and thank you for touching the topic of education, because basically you touched the six foundations of the creative society. There are altogether the 8 foundations of the creative society. These are those pillars on which this kind of society, this format of society can be built. And they didn't appear just occasionally. These are the answers of people after 9 years of social surveys in different countries, in different languages, people of all ages and from different social groups. Then they were talking about the society they would like to live in, and they were talking about the values of such a society. They were all mentioning very similar things. So I invite our viewers to watch the 6th foundation of the creative society on the screen, and I will read it for you. So, every person in the creative society has the right to comprehensive development and personal fulfillment. Education should be free and equally accessible to all, creating conditions and expanding opportunities for a human to implement his or her creative abilities and talents. And this is actually what you said just previously: importance of education and importance of development and creative possibilities for everyone, right?
Right. And also the free expression of these ideas. So in a lot of societies, I've yet to come across a society that does not exercise some form of censorship, either direct or indirect, especially of mass media. There's a lot of censorship, and maybe for good reasons, because a lot of media is just out there to make money, so they want more and more people to watch them or hear them. And sometimes the easiest way to make people watch and hear is to just give them more of what they want and more of what they like. But that's not going to change society, right? So from very young, I was brought up by my late uncle to read a lot of books in the broad arena of what they call utopia and dystopia. So you read the societies or the visions of societies that people imagine from ancient Greece to modern Iraq, what an ideal society should be like. And then you compare it with the way societies really are in reality. And you begin to realize that what is happening is there are a lot of seesawing going on, and at the end of the day, even in what we call very democratic societies, usually it is, and I used to be told as a young boy, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Right? So if I pay the piper, he's going to play my tune, right? And if you also want to pay, then we argue, you give him $1 million, I give him $1 billion. Whose tune do you think he's going to play? Not your tune. You're only giving him $1 million. He's going to play my tune. I'm giving him $1 billion. And this is where now today we got this big debate about the big tech companies, right? Yes. I mean, people like Zuckerberg and all these guys, they can spend huge amounts of money that you and I will probably only dream about. We can't get access to that. And so people begin to get much more conscious. So one way in which to combat this is to try to reduce the power and value of money and say there's other things about human beings that are very, very and fundamentally important.
Yes.
Indeed, much more important than money.
Yes.
There's something called just respecting another's humanity.
True.
Yes. And, I think that's very important. Like Tahira has worked with girls who are raped in Pakistan and other parts of the world, right? These are young, beautiful girls, but the society does not punish the people who are culprits with the degree that they should be punished.
Yeah,
and women have suffered that for years and years, right? My wife is a big women's strong kind of woman. And, even at the dinner table, she sometimes contradicts me right to my face. And then after that, some other people say, hey, Kirpal, You mean you allow your wife to check you and correct you like that? You don't feel ashamed? I said only insecure husbands would feel ashamed, right? I mean, if I'm ashamed of my own wife's opinion, which is opposite than mine, then I can't be a very secure husband or a very secure human being. But most societies are sort of somehow trained to be very male oriented, and therefore women don't get the same kind of hearing. And even the husbands, the brothers, the fathers begin to feel like they have to exercise censorship rights. And so little girls grow up wearing long dresses, being nice. They cannot show their undies. They cannot walk with, certain kinds of things. And so the conditioning begins very young. And if you're creative, then you're called a rebel. And if you're a rebel, then you are, that's correct. So it becomes a big, huge challenge. And I think we need to not only galvanize support, given the Creative Society and the 8 fundamentals and all of that, but I think we need to work very, very, very hard to get the right people to be members of our society. Because a lot of people are so bored with their lives, they'll just sign up and say, wow, this is Creative Society, it's going to be very different, no, we better sign up. So I always tell people, it's good to sign up, it's good to come and listen and talk and engage, but we need commitment. And commitment is a little bit more different, right? Commitment. I mean, why are marriages failing these days? So many marriages are failing everywhere because commitment is missing. It's temporary engagement and temporary alliances. So everything becomes political, Today I'm your friend, tomorrow I'm not your friend because you suddenly decided to be friends with China or friend with Germany or friends with Singapore or whatever. So we become divisive. I think a creative society needs to work for unity, right?
Yes.
Rather than for disunity. Yeah. Sorry.
The biggest thing now, I agree with you, Kirpal.
Thanks.
Everybody talks about creativity, but the level of commitment, you're absolutely right, is not that much. Because to be creative, the first thing is about stretching yourself. It's about stretching yourself, courage, being a little bit different, right? Having the courage to show that you're a little bit different, having the courage to show that you may be labeled as radical.
Right.
So how many are willing to do that? And then you might be, there's this thing called cancel culture.
Correct. Absolutely.
It's a big issue. Suddenly you may not be invited somewhere, or you may be canceled out of publicity or whatever it is. So highly.
Or in the old days, you could even be martyred, right? I mean, look at someone like Galileo. He put his ears to the ground and said, the earth moves. And the church said, what? How dare you say that? The earth doesn't move. It's the sun that moves. But Galileo was persecuted. So I think these are people who give examples, who actually sacrifice their own good fortune by speaking the truth, right? Tahira, you know this, right?
Truth and
a lot of
creativity
people who
comes together.
And I also always ask myself a question: if the majority of people want to live in a beautiful society, in a peaceful world, why people who start to unite each other under the goal to build such a world, why are they not accepted by the society which wishes to live in such a society? And this is a very interesting question. The good thing here is that there are so many good people nowadays, people of goodwill, people who understand the importance of these changes, and people who are ready to commit. And they're getting more and more of them every day. And just as through your explanation and topics, you touched the 3 foundations of the Creative Society. I wanted to introduce them to our viewers as well, please. So you spoke about the 2nd foundation, which is human freedom. Every human is born with the right to be a human being, with a capital H. All people are born free and equal. Everyone has the right to choose. There can be no one and nothing on earth superior to a human, his freedom and rights. The implementation of human rights and freedoms must not violate the rights and freedoms of others. So this was about the importance of freedom for a human to live in a creative society, to be creative. And also you touched the third foundation, which is human safety and how important it is today.
Right.
So no one and nothing in society has the right to create threats to the life and freedom of a human. Every human is guaranteed free provision of essential life necessities, including food, housing, medical care, education, and full social security. Scientific, industrial, and technological activities of the society should be aimed exclusively at improving the quality of human life. Guaranteed economic stability, no inflation and crisis, stable and same prices around the world, a single monetary unit, and a fixed minimal taxation or no tax. The security of human and society from any kind of threats is ensured by the unified global service which deals with emergency situations. And then we start to think about how to save human life, how to protect human life, how to build a society there. Human life is the biggest value. Then, of course, we come to so many points that we should protect a human physically and mentally as well, and create conditions and support each other and respect each other. And what would you say about how quickly our society can change if we accept at least one foundation, that there is nothing more important than human life?
You know, over the many decades that God has blessed me with in terms of life, I'm now 72 years old. I have seen a lot of people who believe in what they call the sanctity of human life. But for them, human life is only meaningful if we think and behave like them. Because if we don't think and behave like them, they feel threatened. And this becomes a very huge problem. Now, you know, Alina, right? You come from a beautiful country. I've had the privilege of giving speeches, you know, at many universities in Switzerland, from St. Gallen to Bern. You know, it's been a marvelous experience. But when I come away, whether it's from Zurich or, you know, Geneva or wherever, even coming from Geneva flying to London, I feel that I'm entering almost a different world. You know, the world of Switzerland is so unique. And partly, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, partly because it is very difficult to become a Swiss citizen if you're not already a Swiss citizen. In other words, there is a protection, you know, a kind of a shield. And it's very difficult you can touch the shield, and once or twice you might even go into it, but very rarely. And because of that, on the one hand, Switzerland continues to live the way most of you want it to be. But on the other hand, you remain the envy of the rest of the world. Not just you, but you know, your Scandinavian group, Denmark, which I love very much. I've given, you know, I was visiting prof in some of the universities in Denmark, Norway, Switzerland. And the life and the realities there are very different. And you also are very blessed with certain degrees of what I would call wealth. And you can use that wealth to come to poor countries, whether it's India or Pakistan or, you know, in the old days, Iraq, or go to Africa, you know, Mozambique or wherever, and share your enlightened life. But unfortunately, it's very difficult to spend 10, 20 years doing that because of family commitments, because you have your own development. You feel that, you know, you cannot compromise everything. So we may go on a 1-year exchange, maybe 2 years, or even if you marry somebody from that culture, it might be 10 years, but after that, you want to come home. And I think the sense of home is very important. Now, from about 1840, 1850, just before Darwin came up with his Origin of Species in 1859, there were already movements saying all of the world is one humanity, right? But how far or near are we from that today?
Oh, too far away.
Too far away. They had the vision, but the vision could not be actualized. And this is always a problem with us creatives. We always have our vision, but to make it practical, to make it work, we need a lot of backing. And whether we like it or not, we do need money too. Because nowadays, without money, it's very hard to go anywhere or do anything. And now with COVID, I don't know whether it's nature's revenge, as some people say. All right. In Asia, a lot of people believe, right, Zahira, that somehow nature is telling human beings, you think you're very powerful? Let me show you. Just a small virus is going to set you back by quite a few years. And true, the coronavirus is very tiny, right? Almost invisible. And so all the vaccines are trying to, capture this and that. And then the viruses are saying, you humans, this is great. We're going to multiply in different variants. So you can do all your vaccines, whatever you can. So in other words, we are being made fun of by these viruses. They're little fellows that we don't even know much about. I think we are being taught a very, very humbling lesson by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to pay attention to that. So some people will put this under climate change, being attentive and sensitive to global, tidal movements and all of that. Others would say, God is telling you, I created you, respect me. Others would say, look, we are losing our human touch. We are becoming plastic.
Others would say pandemic.
Otherwise, you say pandemic. Yeah. So
Pandemic.
all kinds of things are happening.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and just recently we had a very special guest also who is an ambassador of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that from his experience, it's easier for people to unite by themselves globally than to unite for countries. Because this division which we are experiencing today, we are divided into different groups, nationalities, races, religions, pro-vaccines, against vaccines. Everything divides us. And as we understand that it's really time for us to unite, what is your vision? What unites all of us initially? What is that something special which can unite all of us?
I think it's a shared commitment to a specific goal. So if the goal, for example, is to make us all kinder, then we have to try and preach kindness from very young age, so that all young children around the world will come together, not because it is UN sponsored or something like that, but because it believes in the value of kindness. Because a lot of people pay lip service. They say, wow, kindness, very good to be kind. The next thing, they are bashing somebody up, whether verbally in parliament or whether physically at home, wife being beaten or their children being beaten or whatever, or school children being caned or, being told to stand on chairs or go outside of the classroom. So long as punishment is a very major factor of our educational system, I don't think we're going to really be able to change very much, because punishment usually is administered to those who disagree. And by definition, creatives like us, all three of us here I can see, are by nature different, because we are creative. We are not malicious. We are not going to sabotage the government and become prime minister tomorrow or anything like that. But we would like to see some changes coming through in our systems, whether it is now, for example, healthcare, whether it's education will always be a challenge, even the way we run our economy. Where do we spend big money on? I mean, most national budgets are very big in defense budget, right? And defense budgets are very expensive. I mean, the new, technologies are into multi-billions of dollars. But with that kind of money, you can save, I don't know, I won't say a quarter of mankind, but you can certainly help elevate at least a quarter of mankind to a very different level. And I think this is where we can learn a very big and good lesson from China. In recent years, China has been absolutely phenomenal. You know, it's the only country in the world that has taken 300 million human beings out of poverty and raised them to a different level. Now, people say, oh, but that's communist. Now, I think we have to stop, always hammering down a different ideology. Because when you really look at it, if you think of China 30 years ago and where China is today, it has changed. Unfortunately, America is very afraid of this big power that's rising in Asia. And so they're very, very anxious and nervous, right? And a country like Singapore, Tahira, I think you agree with me, we are right in the middle of this, right? Because we've got China as one of our great trading partners, but we've got an American naval base. We've got an American naval base just in Singapore, right?
I think China is sort of a mix, because in different perspectives, China, yes,
Sure.
they have brought out people out of poverty, but also they do control and censorship. They've blocked Facebook,
Correct.
they blocked this and that. So there are two sides. There are two sides to China. Yeah, there are two sides to it.
If
I think
you excuse me saying it, Tahira, there are two sides to many societies. Take the great US of A, right? I mean, I've lived in America. Thank you, America. But I've also known, having lived there many times, that they are also very powerful exercises of censorship. But the way they censor you is very subtle.
Yes.
Not so crude. And so we don't feel so bad when we are not given a platform to speak, because it is a great US of A. But if you're not given a platform in China, we say they're communists. So I think we got to change the manner in which we understand societies, and also we got to change the manner with which we try to create a meaningful, positive dialogue with these countries, or with people from these countries.
With people, I think,
Yeah.
I believe it's era then we should talk as people, stop talking as representatives of countries or different professions, but really apply from human to human.
Yeah.
And in the creative society, the concept of power from the perspective of control doesn't exist. Because the concept of power, it's the eighth foundation of the creative society, it's absent. Since the responsibility for society as a whole, its development, living conditions, and harmonious format lies on each human. Everyone has the right to participate. Self-governing society. Everyone has the right to participate in the management of the affairs of creative society and in the adoption of laws that improve human life. And the solution of socially important, socially significant, and economic issues that affect the quality of a human life is submitted for public discussion and voting, referendum. So there again, then we have this concept that for us, the biggest value is human life. Understanding, as you mentioned at the beginning, the spiritual nature of a human, that every human is a spirit above all. And then protecting this spiritual nature by giving a chance to every participant of the society, member of the society, to grow, to develop, and then to participate, to take on the responsibility. Then finally we will live in the society of mature and grown up people, right?
Right. Absolutely. Very critical. You know, human beings have dreamed of utopia almost from day one. But humans have also been lumbered with a very cruel reality around them, also from day one. All right. In the Christian myth, we think of Adam and Eve, and we think of the paradise they were living in. And the whole mythology is somehow they fell from grace because they did something very human. They made love. And that was considered a sin, right? Tahira, am I right?
Are you sure that's the reason why they fell from grace? I thought it was.
I think that is basically the explanation. They fell from grace because they participated in what they will call carnal knowledge.
Okay, you
But the
changed
poor fellows, there was only Adam and there was only Eve. There was nobody else. There was no choice.
Oh, there are so many conceptions about it, really.
Okay, right. I thought it was the snake. Okay, never mind. That's okay.
But
So,
that
guys,
is something that a lot of societies are very comfortable with. Whenever things go wrong, blame somebody else.
See, Dr.
There's the
Kirpal
evil one, the
living
bad
example
one, the
of
evil
creative
one.
person.
Yeah.
exactly,
Because we
that's
can't
a
cope with the
concept to always
reality.
blame someone. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
it's how our mind is structured. Yes,
Correct.
that's why
Yep.
in all ancient scripts and books and philosophies and also artifacts which we found globally, there was a knowledge that a human controls the animal inside himself.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
all these goddess and gods sitting on tombs, that the animal is inside the tomb, or someone holding in two hands.
Correct. Yep.
Very animal. So this is
Yep.
like a knowledge which was given to us that we should overcome this egoism nature inside ourselves in order to become as strong as gods and
Correct.
spiritually and physically.
Yep.
Excuse me, everyone, but the time of our show is running to the end
Oops.
already. And
Okay,
just
so
before
fast,
we finish, I would
Yeah.
like to give a floor to Tahira. Maybe you want to ask the last question for today.
I'm not going to ask a question because I think we've covered a lot, but I just want to consolidate, I would say.
Great.
Consolidating everything. So what we arrived at is about returning to human, not looking at countries, not looking at all these groups. We need to go back to the human, besides all the segregations that we have. So when you go back to human, that's when you can start implementing a creative society and allowing them to be free. That's a very basic thing. I mean, as a creative person, if I'm not free, I can't do anything. Go back to the individual. So that is the basic. And then we have the other things. When you're free, give them safety. To be safe, they should be safe, right? We talked about that.
Right.
We should not be cancelled out. We should not be hunted down. If we have creative ideas, we have to be safe and respected, of course. We should be looked as an anomaly in a negative way or a misfit in society. You talked about that. Yes, we need to be embraced. So these basic things, if you can start looking at those basic things, you've given all those great examples, Kirpal. So now it's just becoming those values. That's what it is, right? And then automatically, when you allow people to be creative and free, they become self-governing, right?
There you go.
If you don't have all those things, I'm not going to be self-governing. I'm going to be attacking, because I'm restricted.
Correct.
So it all ties in together. Those basic values,
And then we talk about freedom. We talk about transparency and opening of information.
Correct.
Because the information should be open and available to every member of the society, the true information. That's what, these are the values you are bringing back to this world already by what you do and by your project, right? The award for honest writers and bloggers, journalists. That's amazing, really. And so everything is possible, right?
We think so. We are creative, right?
It is possible. It's possible.
We are optimistic utopians. Yeah.
When you're focusing on truth, you're automatically optimistic. Okay.
There you go.
Because it's not easy to carry out and be an example of truth in this society, because we're going to start making changes. So being it, right? Being it in every possible way, speaking it, writing it in every possible way, and then other humans get impacted. So working on the human level.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Changes.
Thank you so much for today's
Thank you.
conversation. It was great
Thank
to
you.
have you on
Thank
our
you.
show, and
You
to
both,
like everything is done by volunteers. Kirpal, that our Creative Society project is an open platform for volunteers, and people from different countries join. It's not NGO, it's not sponsored by anyone. Everything is done by people, by volunteers. This is why there is no possibility to control it. This is just from the heart of a human being. So today's broadcast was also organized by volunteers and technically supported by volunteers.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
In 180 countries today, people are already implementing their first stage of building a creative society, which is informational stage. That's what we were doing today. So millions of people are already participants of this global, and I would say the most important project in the world. And I'm not exaggerating, because we are at the vital necessity of the change of the format of our society.
Absolutely.
And I would like to invite you and everyone to join this project. That's very easy. Dear viewers, please go to allatraunites.com, and there is a red button, join us. Choose the language you speak and leave your email or telephone number, and volunteers from your country or people who speak your language will contact you, and together we will discuss what we can do united to inform people about this project. And just before the very end of our show, I would like to make an announcement, because on the 20th of March, 2021, there will be the third global conference organized by the participants of the project Creative Society. And this time they choose a very unexpected name for this conference, which is called Creative Society, What the Prophets Dreamed of. During this conference, we want to talk about those universal grains which were given to the humanity through the knowledge brought to us by prophets, God messengers, and people of wisdom of our world. And what did we people do with this knowledge? If we don't live in the creative or ideal society yet, that means we don't follow the advices of our prophets. So maybe it's time for us to talk about it, to find out why it didn't come true, and to think together what we can do in order really to live in the world which our prophets dreamed of. So I would like to invite you as well to participate in preparation and research for this conference, and maybe to be speakers at this conference. Millions of people are preparing now for this conference.
Wonderful. Sure. Wonderful. That's congratulations. That's a very, very noble project. Yeah. And a good one. We'll have a lot of impact.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. And we will have more. We will bring in more people from our Golden Door community who are truth writers. That comes in together as creativity. They're writing their heart. They're writing their truth.
Absolutely. That's so important.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you, Tahira. And congratulations on the first co-hosting on ALLATRA TV.
Thank you.
It was great pleasure to be in live broadcast with you together. So please, guys, dear viewers, watch the trailer, the announcement of the conference, and see you soon on ALLATRA TV.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Unprecedented event of present history. Initiative that comes from people around the world. Main project of humanity. People stopped being silent about urgent issues of our society. How it all started. May 2019, International Online Conference, Society, The Last Chance. 140 countries of the world, hundreds of thousands of people online, hundreds of broadcast platforms, translated into 7 languages simultaneously. If we all want to live in peace, why do we have a world of violence and destruction? It is up to us to build a different world. How can we do it? December 2020, Creative Society. United we can. 180 countries of the world, millions of people online, thousands of streaming platforms, 35 languages simultaneously translated. People have voiced today's reality and what they truly desire. And it is the Creative Society. All cultures have an image of the ideal world people want to live in. A world that prophets talked about. The time has come when we can make it real. How will we use this chance? Let's meet March 20, 2021, 3 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time and 10 a.m. Eastern Time. International online event of global scale. Creative Society, what the prophets dreamed of. This is the day the world will unite to find out the truth, join the entire humanity, and spread the